Bom dia, bandidos ilícitos, opressores da extrema-direita que faz discurso de ódio. Como estão vocês hoje? Gostaram da decoração de Natal? Minha esposa caprichou mesmo esse ano e bendita é aquela mulher que edifica a casa, graças a Deus. Mas hoje nós vamos falar a respeito de Israel e Palestina. Com certeza você ouve nos jornais, nos telejornais, todo mundo falando a respeito disso. Sempre descendo o pau em Israel, é ou não é verdade? Até os esquerdistas, como o Freixo, né, apoiam aqueles que queimam bandeiras de Israel.
Nosso candidato agora a vereador do Rio de Janeiro. É muito importante que você busque conhecer a história do Babá.
Viva a heróica resistência da Palestina!
É muito estranho essa história toda, é ou não é? Existem diversos países árabes do lado, um monte de território, mas eles querem realmente extinguir aquele priquito de barata que é Israel. Minúsculo. Depois da Segunda Guerra Mundial, tudo aquilo que os judeus sofreram, eles não têm direito nem de ter uma faixinha de terra do tamanho de New Jersey, do tamanho de El Salvador. Parece muito esquisito. Então é importante que você preste atenção, porque essa é uma das grandes injustiças da história da humanidade. Preste bastante atenção. Quero avisar novamente, sei que tem muita gente aí de saco cheio. Ah, não. Ele vai falar da Masterclass, da Masterclass. É, da Masterclass. Ela começa dia 11, tá bom? Então você corra, as vagas realmente são limitadas. É possível que o negócio acabe em 2, 3 dias. Então dia 11 de dezembro começam as matrículas. Eu estou inclusive separando aqui do lado, vou mostrar para vocês, alguns livros que nós vamos debater. Diversos dele, A Arte da Guerra, do Sun Tzu, Sofrimento de uma Vida Sem Sentido, Nova Ordem Mundial, Como Ser um Conservador, Como Vencer a Guerra Cultural, Suma contra os Gentios, muita coisa mesmo. Todos os dias no fórum, um capítulo de livro diferente, com um tema diferente para nós debatermos. Eu vou estar diariamente lá, constantemente, organizando esse grupo de estudos. Então realmente vai ser uma coisa incrível. Só de livros aí que nós vamos ver, nós vamos economizar, você vai economizar aí pelo menos uns 3 mil reais de livro, 4 mil reais de livros, tá? Então vai ser um negócio muito importante. E esse tema, Israel e Palestina, também nós vamos discutir lá. Existem informações muito importantes no livro Desinformação, do Tenente Coronel Pachepa. Nós vamos ver isso também, vamos discutir a respeito disso. Agora preste atenção para que você entenda de uma vez por todas o que é que acontece entre Israel e Palestina.
Nando.
Nando.
Então, Nando.
Então, Nando.
Ô, Nando.
Nando. Então, Nando. Então, Nando.
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 When I did my graduate studies at the Middle East Institute at Columbia University's School of International Affairs, I took many courses on the question of the Middle East conflict. Semester after semester, we studied the Middle East conflict as if it was the most complex conflict in the world, when in fact, it is probably the easiest conflict in the world to explain. It may be the hardest to solve, but it is the easiest to explain. In a nutshell, it's this. One side wants the other side dead. Israel wants to exist as a Jewish state and to live in peace. Israel also recognizes the right of Palestinians to have their own state and to live in peace. The problem, however, is that most Palestinians and many other Muslims and Arabs do not recognize the right of the Jewish state of Israel to exist. This has been true since 1947, when the United Nations voted to divide the land called Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Jews accepted the United Nations partition, but no Arab or any other Muslim country accepted it. When British rule ended on May 15, 1948, the armies of all the neighboring Arab states, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Transjordan, and Egypt, attacked the one-day-old state of Israel in order to destroy it. But to the world's surprise, the little Jewish state survived. Then it happened again. In 1967, the dictator of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser, announced his plan, in his words, to destroy Israel. He placed Egyptian troops on Israel's border, and armies of surrounding Arab countries were also mobilized to attack. However, Israel preemptively attacked Egypt and Syria. Israel did not attack Jordan and begged Jordan's king not to join the war. But he did. And only because of that did Israel take control of Jordanian land, specifically the West Bank of the Jordan River. Shortly after the war, the Arab states went to Khartoum, Sudan, and announced their famous 3 no's. No recognition, no peace, and no negotiations. What was Israel supposed to do? Well, one thing Israel did a little more than a decade later in 1978 was to give the entire Sinai Peninsula, an area of land bigger than Israel itself and with oil, back to Egypt because Egypt, under new leadership, signed a peace agreement with Israel. So Israel gave land for the promise of peace with Egypt, and it has always been willing to do the same thing with the Palestinians. All the Palestinians have ever had to do is recognize Israel as a Jewish state and promise to live in peace with it. But when Israel has proposed trading land for peace, as it did in 2000, when it agreed to give the Palestinians a sovereign state in more than 95% of the West Bank and all of Gaza, the Palestinian leadership rejected the offer and instead responded by sending waves of suicide terrorists into Israel. Meanwhile, Palestinian radio, television, and school curricula remain filled with glorification of terrorists, demonization of Jews, and the daily repeated message that Israel should cease to exist. So it's not hard to explain the Middle East dispute. One side wants the other dead. The motto of Hamas, the Palestinian rulers of Gaza, is, "We love death as much as the Jews love life." There are 22 Arab states in the world, stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. There is one Jewish state in the world, and it is about the size of New Jersey. In fact, tiny El Salvador is larger than Israel. Finally, think about these 2 questions. If tomorrow Israel laid down its arms and announced, "We will fight no more," what would happen? And if the Arab countries around Israel laid down their arms and announced, "We will fight no more," what would happen? In the first case, there would be an immediate destruction of the state of Israel and mass murder of its Jewish population. In the second case, there would be peace the next day. As I said at the outset, it is a simple problem to describe. One side wants the other dead. And if it didn't, there would be peace. Please remember this. There has never been a state in the geographic area known as Palestine that was not Jewish. Israel is the 3rd Jewish state to exist in that area. There was never an Arab state, never a Palestinian state, never a Muslim or any other state. That's the issue. Why can't the one Jewish state the size of El Salvador be allowed to exist? That is the Middle East problem. I'm Dennis Prager.
Visit Israel, and you'll be startled by how many colors you'll see. I don't mean the colors of the buildings or landscape. I mean the colors of the people. Black, white, olive, brown, and everything in between. Israel is a true United Nations. That's because Israel is a nation of refugees from everywhere. And more than half of them are from, are you ready? Arab countries. Over 850,000 Jews were expelled or fled from the Middle East and North Africa following the Arab country's attack on Israel when it gained its independence in 1948. For over 2,000 years, these Jews had lived in the Arab countries of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, and in the Muslim but non-Arab countries such as Turkey and Iran. Today, they form over half of Israel's Jewish population. Many of these Jews from Middle Eastern lands look, well, just like other people from Middle Eastern lands, of darker complexion with dark hair. Other Jews migrated from North Africa. So why is their story so unfamiliar to most people? The most important reason is that they didn't remain refugees for long. But refugees they most certainly were. The vast majority forced to leave their homes, possessions, and businesses behind. In other words, they came to Israel with nothing. Some 650,000 of the Jews forced to flee North Africa and the Middle East became citizens of Israel. The other 200,000 fled to the United States and other Western countries. To give you an idea of how few Jews remain in Arab countries, consider these numbers. There were 150,000 Jews in Iraq in 1948. Today, there are less than 10. There were 140,000 Jews in Algeria. Today, there are less than 50. There were 75,000 Jews in Egypt. Today, less than 20. The pattern is the same across North Africa and the Middle East. Now contrast these forgotten Jewish refugees with the most celebrated refugees in the world, the Palestinians. How is it that the Jewish refugees are not even an afterthought, but the Palestinians are the longest lasting, most lavishly supported refugee population in the history of the world? The answer is purely political. After Israel gained its independence in May of 1948, the surrounding Arab nations attacked the new Jewish state. As a result, about 700,000 Arabs living in Israel fled. Many left because of the war, and many did because they were told by Arab leaders to leave the Jewish areas. The idea was that they would return once the Jews and their state had been destroyed. Khalid al-Azam, the Syrian prime minister in 1948 to 1949, admitted this Arab role in persuading Palestinians to leave. In his memoirs, he wrote, "Since 1948, we have been demanding the return of the refugees to their homes, but we ourselves are the ones who encouraged them to leave." That's how the Arab, later renamed Palestinian refugee crisis was created. In 1949, the United Nations formed UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for the Palestinian refugees, the largest and only long-term UN agency that was ever formed to deal with just one group of refugees. 70 years later, it still exists and still calls the Palestinians and their children and their grandchildren refugees. It has an annual budget of over $1 billion, funded mostly by the U.S. and the European Union. How much did the Jewish refugees who were expelled from the Middle East and North Africa receive from the UN? How much did Israel receive to help toward their resettlement? How much does it receive today? The answer to all three questions is the same: zero. So the next time you hear someone talk about the Palestinian refugees, ask them why they never talk about the Jewish refugees. And the next time you hear people talk about Israel being settled by Europeans, ask them if they've ever seen an actual picture of Israelis in color. I'm Dumisani Washington of Christians United for Israel for Prager University.
To subscribe to our YouTube channel, click here. To help keep our videos free, donate here.